It's like the fork in the road. They either get easier or they get more difficult, depending on you.
If you have a parent that comes to you with what they call a threenager, are there common threads that you see with how they've parented in the toddler years?
If you're a pleaser parent and you have no control and you're inconsistent, they get more challenging because they take over. They usually try and give them a lot of warnings, empty threats. They're inconsistent. Kids pick up on that and they see you as weak. If you're a leader and you're calm when you're disciplining and you know how to connect with them, they get easier. Welcome to the BratBusters Parenting Podcast. My name's Lisa Bunnage. I'm a parenting coach. I'm a mom. I'm also a grandmother.
And I'm Amy Bunnage, Lisa's daughter, and I handle the marketing and planning here at BratBusters. While I don't have kids, each episode will dive into parenting topics and Lisa will answer your questions. Let's get started.
Okay, sweetie, what do we just had the giggles about something. Okay, sweetie, what are we talking about today?
So we're going to touch on something that you talk about a lot. And you talk about this fork in the road when the kid turns 3.
Mm-hmm. That's my own made up thing, but I talk about it all the time. And the fork in the road at 3 years old, this is where it comes from. I see this. I've been working with kids for like 50 plus years, and I see this all the time. Right around the age of 3, it literally is when their brain is starting to develop the sense of reasoning. It's when they're able to stop and think before they act. Before that, not so much. So if they can stop and think before they act, they're going to stop and analyze you a little bit too. And they're going to think, and it's like the fork in the road. They either get easier or they get more difficult, depending on you. They'll stop and think, wait a minute, you don't know what you're doing. You say one thing, do another, you're inconsistent. I think I'm in charge here. So they really take off with it. That's when they find their power, okay? But if you're a leader, they just relax and they just become easier because they're past that impulsive toddler time. So they just stop and think, and they think, well, there's no point getting in trouble because my parents know what to do. There's going to be a consequence. So then they just calm right down. Or they might not be difficult at all. But this is generally, it's that fork in the road. If you're a pleaser parent and you have no control and you're inconsistent, they get more challenging because they take over. If you're a leader and you're calm when you're disciplining and you know how to connect with them, they get easier.
I know the term threenager gets thrown around a lot.
That's why. Because they'll say they were great. Everything was going well until they turned 3. And all of a sudden they were just gotten sassy and all this. And I'm like, yeah, that's the fork in the road. I invented that, by the way. Like, I don't know who else says that, but I've just seen it over all these decades.
Something I want to touch on is some parents will say, well, I had 3 kids and only one, or the last one, as soon as they turned 3. So it's not their parenting. What's your response to that?
Well,
sorry, they're saying only one kid started acting out.
Got difficult. Well, it might not be in the others. They have to have that in their basic nature anyway. Okay, not all kids are going to be rebellious and act out. They don't have a wild streak. Kids are kind of born with that. You know, they kind of want to get in trouble. They kind of like the wild side. That's what I mean. But if they have that in them and you're a leader, they don't tend to exercise it. That's why. The third one just had a bit of a wild streak in it. That's all.
And that's why your behavior board starts at 3.
Starts at 3. They can stop and think before they act. They won't always do it, but they can start to learn how to stop and think before they act.
Now, something to touch on is with the boot camp course, because you have it from 3 to 12. Why do you approach it similar with a 12-year-old versus a 3-year-old?
Because they're still kids and they're tweens at 9 to 12 years old. Preteen or tweens is what they're called, 9 to 12. It's when the hormones start to kick in, but they're not teenagers yet. This 3 to 12 is when you're at the height of your leadership. You're very important to them, like really important to them. When they're babies and toddlers, they're just kind of in their own little world anyway. Doesn't mean you're not important to them, but they're not thinking things through a lot. But at 3, they're coming to you with their problems. At 12, they're coming to you with their problems. The outside world doesn't have as much influence yet. When they're teenagers, that's when they start spreading their wings and forming some independence. So we change how we parent through the teen years, which I found that was my favorite age, by the way. When you know how to deal with teenagers, it doesn't have to be a difficult time, but parents don't often change how they parent with teenagers. That's the problem. You do have to change that. But a 3-year-old and a 12-year-old, you're kind of the same parent. You might ask them, like the same style of parenting. You might ask them more advice on things like, hey, look, you broke a rule here. So what do you think is a good consequence? You're starting to do that more. Bring them in on the negotiations, that sort of thing. But yeah, you're basically the same type of parent because that's what they need. They're not teenagers yet. It's not that a 3 and a 12-year-old are the same, but your parenting is very similar.
Now, it might not be similarities between all of the parents, but if you have a parent that comes to you with what they call a threenager, are there common threads that you see with how they've parented in the toddler years?
I would say they're usually pleaser parents. They usually try and give them a lot of warnings and empty threats. They don't follow through with what they're inconsistent, that sort of thing. Kids pick up on that and they see you as weak. That would be my you're trying to please them. Well, if will you do that if I do this, or if you don't, they'll threaten or they'll bribe. They do all, they're afraid of them basically. That's what kids pick up on. Oh, you're really afraid of me. I think I'll take over here.
I mean, from what I've heard, toddlers can be terrifying.
Well, they're all feet, no brains. They're cute as a button, but they're all feet, no brains. And they don't have a lot of thought processes going into things that they're doing. They often just do what they're going to do. Their bodies, it's like their bodies take over. Their brains haven't developed enough to do anything about it. Okay. But they do learn through, well, we're not talking about toddlers here, are we? No, we're not talking about toddlers. But yeah, they're at 3. They just change at 3. 3 years and 9 months is another huge milestone. And I think a lot of studies will prove that too. I've always said 3 years and 9 months is when they start to be able to develop empathy. They start to see themselves as one in a whole. They start to understand there's other people around, kind of just like them. Other people have feelings too. Whereas before that, they tend to just orbit in their own little minds. But after that, they start to see, wait a minute, there's other people out there like me. They can start to develop empathy. It doesn't mean they will, but they have the ability to start to develop empathy.
Now, this isn't about toddlers, but I do think that you'll probably have a lot of toddler parents listening where they're like, okay, like, what do I do to make sure I don't run into this? Like,
say what you mean and mean what you say. And oh, geez, I could go on. How long is this podcast? Well, say what you mean and mean what you say. Don't yell. Yelling makes you look like you're afraid. It's not a leadership role. Play hard with them. You play hard. What I mean by that, get on the floor and play on their level. By the way, I daycare my granddaughter one day a week, and my back's always sore that night because I'm on the floor the whole time. I'm not pulling her up on the couch playing, in grandma's world, which would be sitting on the couch. I'm on the floor playing hard with her. They just look at you differently when you do that. You're in their world. So that gives you a lot of power, is when you play hard in their world. Play is their love language. Toddlers especially. Play is their love language.
yeah, you were even saying today, you're like, so when I was in the ball pit.
It's funny because this is my son's daughter. She's only 14 months old. And his wife put 2 pictures in our family chat. And there's one of my son in the ball pit, and then there's another one of me in the ball pit, like mother, like son. I was right in that ball pit. There's no way I'm going to show her the ball pit and not get into it. Like, I'm in there. She didn't even want to go in, but I did yank her in. She was okay. She's afraid of it because it's like a tent. But yeah, I did pull her in. She ended up kind of enjoying it. But yeah, play hard with them, get in their world, and then when they do something naughty, you say no, and then you might want to get up and walk away for a little bit. Might do something like that. My granddaughter's too young for that, by the way. She's only 14 months. I wouldn't really start doing that till about 16 months. I redirect them when they're little. Under that, I redirect. Like, let's say she did something that she shouldn't touch or whatever, I would just redirect. I would just say, oh no, let's go over here. So I redirect. But once they hit about 16 months, around there, then you start to say no, and then you remove them. You don't have to redirect so much. You're teaching them right from wrong more. But before that, it's more just changing their focus.
From what I've heard you talk about, it's a lot about consistency
to
set yourself up in those years.
And be careful what you say, because you need to follow through. So, and be consistent. Like you said, it's consistency. If you're one parent one day and then you're different the next day, it doesn't work. They're very confused by that. And they tend to not respect you. So mean what you say and say what you mean. It's a story, told this many times, but I was telling a client today, I said, I know all my stories are on repeat, but my kids are grown up. I haven't got any new stories. It's all the same old stories. But anyway, my son was about 4 years old, and I was going to drive him down to Dream World. This is in the Gold Coast in Australia where we lived. So, and I was meeting a friend down there with her kids, and my son just was in a mood for no reason I could think of. He was in a mood, and he just had a miserable look on his face when we got there. So I said to him, my friend had arrived with her kids in her car. So I said to him, if you don't put a smile on your face right now, we're turning around and going home. And my friend went, oh no, because she knows I would have. And as soon as it was out of my mouth, I thought, oh no. Instantly, my son put this big phony smile on his face, and then he ended up being happy all day. But yeah, be careful what you say. I regretted saying it as soon as I did, because I knew if he didn't put a smile on his face, we would have driven home. So be careful what you say. because you got to follow through. And he knew I would have. That's why he was in such a good mood all day. And he put a smile on his face. He knew I would have driven home. If I was not a parent of my word, he might not have. Right? He might have thought, yeah, you don't mean that.
I never once remember you not following through.
Not once. I was careful with what I said, because I thought I never said anything that I wasn't going to follow through with. Sometimes I would say something, then I go, oh shoot, that means I'm going to have to do it. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there would be some times where you'd say, oh, you can have Tim Tams after school.
Oh,
and the Tim Tams were gone.
Oh, great. You have to bring that up again.
You know, I was only a child once, and my stories just need to be on repeat because it's not like I'd have another childhood.
Okay. Yeah, that was the time that we had Tim Tams, which are a really delicious treat. You probably know what they are by now, but in Australia, that's the only place I'd ever heard of them before. They were delicious cookies that you had to buy, and I made all of our food from scratch usually. So treats were a big deal in our house. They knew that we had Tim Tams in the house, and I promised them they could have one after school. Well, of course, they're at school, and I'm home, and I eat the whole pack. So they get in the car, and I'd forgotten I'd eaten them, and I'd forgotten all about them. And they get in the car, and they go, oh, I can't wait for that Tim Tam when we get home. And I went, oh. No, I went, uh-oh. And they both knew right away. You ate them, didn't you? Yes, I did. So I had to run out and buy them new pack.
We got like the caramel-filled ones.
Yeah, they got the good stuff because Mom ate all the other ones. So yeah, I was in trouble. But I followed through. I said they could have Tim Tams. They got Tim Tams.
We did. Okay, we'll go into the questions.
Sure.
So we have Caroline from the United States, age 3, always getting calls from school to pick him up. He is punching teachers in timeout, throwing chairs, spitting, and telling them to stop talking. Just flat out will not listen.
Oh, that's red zone. You got to work on yourself. You can't do anything about that really at school because he's so red zone. If he's being sent home and he's spitting and throwing chairs, that's red zone. He's only 3. You got to work on your leadership skills. I recommend that you look into my boot camp course, the 3 to 12-year-old one. It sets you up as a leader in 5 weeks. If you were a leader at home, there's no way he'd be doing that at school. It just wouldn't add up because he didn't just learn that at school. He would have learned that he can push himself around. You know what it says to me? I'm guessing you're a pleaser. He's used to everything going his own way at home, and he gets his own way. And when he doesn't get his own way at school, he has a fit. It is hell on earth at school because he's used to getting his own way at home. That would be my guess. Not always as they get older, but at 3, I'm guessing you're a pleaser. You just give him whatever he wants just to avoid a scene. Am I right? I could be wrong, but it's a guess. There could be other factors, but that would be my guess just from that question.
But there is also the free mini course, the behavior board.
The behavior board's a mini course. It's free. You can check that out. But if he's red zone at 3, that's why I said I recommend the course. I really do. The boot camp course. He's red zone. If he's being sent home at 3, that's red zone. Doesn't mean there's no hope. It just means you got to really work on your leadership skills. And that the mini course is good. It's the behavior board. It's 3 weeks, and it's just basically the behavior board. The course goes into, everything else, and it goes for 5. It's a 5-week course.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah.
So Sarah from Canada. My son just turned 3 and we have a 4-month-old. Our oldest has always been resistant to demands and often says no if we ask him to do something. I used to explain and ask again, but since I found you a month ago, I've been applying your technique and it helps, but the defiance often turns into a tantrum. So for example, putting his shoes on in the morning, getting out of the shower when we ask him to. I've been trying to only say things once, but when I have a baby, I sometimes find it hard to follow through. And when it turns into a tantrum, I have a hard time staying and waiting for it to be over, since I often have the baby to take care of. Any tips on how to manage defiance and tantrums while taking care of a baby?
Well, okay, the thing is, I can't really help you with that, and that you're trying to avoid the tantrums, I'm thinking. You can't. Those tantrums are his lessons. Every storm is a lesson at the end of it. So you said, and then I'll get him to do something and then he'll have a tantrum, or he will have a tantrum if I make him do something. You want that. Because you're afraid of him right now. You're afraid of that scene, that tantrum, because you got the 4-month-old. Give yourself more time to leave. Give yourself some tantrum buffer time. When you know he's going to have a fit, you're going to have to if you have to leave in 10 minutes, let's say, make it start 20 minutes earlier. Give him time to have that tantrum. I know it's exhausting, but he's 3 now. That's when he can start coming out of tantrums. So you really want to deal with this now. And I can't help you. I get asked this all the time. How do I deal with a toddler? 3 is not a toddler, but how do I deal with a young child and a baby? It's just physically demanding. I don't know. I think what you're asking for, is there a shortcut? There are no shortcuts with this. So it is just hard work. So leave yourself extra time and plan for the tantrum to happen. You want that. That is his lesson. That is him losing control at hearing the word no. The sooner he learns to accept the word no, or we have to go, that you're in charge, whatever it is, that you're a leader, as soon as he accepts that, the tantrums will stop. But it's just going to be a ride. Don't be afraid of those tantrums. Those are the lessons. Every fit, scene, tantrum, and meltdown is an opportunity to learn something on his part. Drives you nuts, I know, but if you try and avoid them, you're going to end up... if you're trying to avoid tantrums, you're pretty much guaranteed doing the wrong thing. Because the only way to avoid a tantrum is to give in to his demands, give him what he wants. And you can't do that if it's something that has to be done. And once you've said something has to be done, you have to follow through. You can't back up, or else he just won. He just became the leader. You're now reacting to him. He's in charge. He gets that.
You talk a lot about the short-term pain.
It is short-term pain, all this stuff I teach, but it's for long-term gain. A lot of parents want, can you please tell me the short-term gain? That is the long-term pain. So yeah, giving in to his demands. If you don't want to go through any tantrums, give him everything he wants. He'll still have them, and they'll get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. But in the first week, it might make your life easier. It'll backfire pretty fast because he's going to start pushing for more and more and more. Do you know why they do that? Doesn't make any sense at all, does it? It does to me. He's pushing you to become a leader. All children instinctively need, crave, and want a leader. That's why they act out. They're pushing you into it. They're pushing you into delivering to them what they need. They need your leadership. And that's how they ask for it, by acting out. You look at a kid, you look at kids in a classroom, and they have a pleaser teacher, a teacher who tries to please them all. And sure, you don't want to have lunch at that time, we'll have it at that time. You can have lunch whenever you want. You look at the faces on those kids. You look at the way they're treating each other and the teacher. They're miserable. Then you go to the next classroom and you got a leader. They have rules, they have boundaries. The leader's also fun, but the kids are so much happier. Leadership is not mean. It's actually the opposite. It's kindness. Children who have a really calm leader as a parent tend to have high self-esteem. They like themselves. There was a teenager I used to work with, and he said to me later on, he says, I didn't like myself until I met you, Lisa. Wow. I was a leader. Makes them feel good. A leader's like a mentor. You bring out the best in them. You're there, you're like on the same team. You want the best for them, and they pick up on that. They know that whatever you're saying or doing, it's for their own good and that you care about them. Kids instinctively pick up on that when you're good at it. They just do. They're drawn to a leader. You're like the Pied Piper. They'll follow you around because they're drawn. Have you ever had anyone in your life that's like a mentor? It could have been a coach, a teacher, a grandparent that you looked up to that made you feel great about yourself. Didn't you want to be around them? That's what I teach. It's like being a mentor, someone that they look up to and feel good about themselves around because you bring out the best in them. What a speech. Whew, my mouth's dry after that one.
Just had to Google what Pied Piper means.
I'm not even sure anymore. I've said it so many times. It's someone that the kids follow around.
I was listening to a business podcast about the topic of leadership, and they said, really, if you look at a group of workers, they're like, you know they have a leader as a manager when they act well when the leader's gone.
That's what I always say. If they're like that everywhere, they're not just like that when you're around. That's an authority. They'll be good in front of an authority. An authority, old style parent, that's the authority style, is based on fear and intimidation. So they're kind of afraid of you. But a leader, no, you just bring out the best in them, and they're like that everywhere. Because they wouldn't want it to get back to you either. You're that important to them. You make them feel so good. You're the source of their self-esteem. When they get older, they are their own source. But when they're growing up, they need a source of self-esteem, and that's you. So they don't want it to get back to you that they were acting up. They'd be embarrassed. That's why when I was working with troubled teenagers, I often said to them, I said, so, you're great with me. And I hear, everyone else is raving about you. And they said, yeah, I wouldn't want it to get back to you. I thought that was fascinating. They would be embarrassed if a teacher told me that gave them the finger or something. They would have been embarrassed that I heard that. So it changes them no matter where they are. They like themselves.
Okay, the next question is Sarah Jane from England. My 3-year-old is amazing but struggles with his temper. He can be in such a nice mood, then suddenly flips and starts shouting at us to go away or shut up. And try to ignore the crazy behavior, but then he starts lashing out, slapping and kicking. My question is this a phase or a power struggle? When I discipline, we use a short timeout, and then once he's calmed down, I tell him it's not okay to do what he did, and then we move on. I know you advise against timeouts, but I think they are probably more for me because I don't want to shout at him or meet his temper with mine.
Get rid of timeout. I can't stand it. And also don't have the mini therapy session discussing what he did wrong. When he hits, you use the behavior board and put on there no hitting. And then after he hits and calms down, say, let's go to the board. Okay, it says no hitting. You hit. Here's a consequence. That's how it's done. It's that calm. Eventually, you're working on down the road. It's not going to solve it today. You're building your leadership skills. That's how it's done. Okay, the timeout is, I think timeouts are mean. I can't stand them. They're useless. And then afterwards, then you had a mini therapy session discussing what he did wrong. And then you went into the shaming and blaming department. Let's say you did something wrong. Okay, let's say you got a ticket for speeding, right? And then the cop phones you at home the next day to discuss what you did wrong. So you know you did that wrong. Are you going to do that again? You knew better. You knew better. What is that? It's the same psychology. What is that? How would that make you feel? You can answer that, Amy. How would that make you feel? You get a ticket for speeding, and that's great. The police says, okay, have a nice day, drive off. The next day he calls you because he wants to discuss what you did wrong, that you should know better.
Well, for me, it would be a ticket for driving too slow.
Yes, I know.
I don't think I've ever sped. It's not to put me up on a high horse. I'm just a nervous driver. But yeah, it wouldn't feel good.
No, why? What is that? Why would he not do that? It's ridiculous. Why would he not do that?
Oh, it's just like, let it go.
You already did the punishment. You already got the ticket. The kid's already been punished. You put him in timeout, which was the punishment, and then you talk about it later. Hey, that wasn't enough. Let's cut that wound open a little bit more and dive right into it. Yeah, don't do it. Just say, oh, okay, you hit. Let's go to the board. No hitting was the rule. Here's your consequence. Done. That's how it's done. It's that calm. And who cares if he has a tantrum and has a fit? That's him processing your lack of leadership. Yes, he is exercising. It's a power struggle. Absolutely right now. That's that 3-year-old fork in the road. He's realized that you're weak and he's taken over. Okay. And you can learn how to be strong. That's all I teach here. It's a teachable skill how to do all this. You can check out the free behavior board, or you can look into the boot camp course. It's all on the website, BratBusters.com. Check it out. Lots of free stuff there. The behavior board, all these podcasts are free, all the videos. Okay, or you can buy the course.
How do you handle that with the letting things go? Let's say it's something that like it hits you as a parent. Let's say like you have a treasured item and they break it when they're mad. How do you just let that go?
You don't always let it go. Do we want to talk about the spoons?
Let's talk about the spoons. I was thinking of that.
Yep. Okay. None of us are perfect. And you were college age when this happened. Now, okay. God, this feels good to talk about again. I'm banned from discussing it, but
because it was discussed so much.
It upset me. Okay, what happened was, now remember, she's college age. And by the way, the reason that you don't keep rehashing stuff is it's just shaming and blaming. I have no problem doing that with an adult. She was an adult. Anyway, what happened was she used to pack all her lunches and everything for school, for college. So she would take these, we all love these spoons. That was my mom. My mom died. And this was the beloved, and I like to keep her stuff that I use every single day. And we use all of her utensils every single day. I also know you took some forks because I'm missing a bunch of those, but none of the knives are missing. I got tons of those. So anyway, so she took these darn spoons and I said, you bring that back. I will get off my back, Mom, that kind of thing, like as if I'm being ridiculous. Anyway, and they were all gone. There weren't any spoons. And she goes, oh, I think they're down in my room or something, right? Whatever. So I said, okay. And then I said to her, she goes, I don't know how I found out, but there was a thing that came, she was finished with college. It was a summer or something. And they sent a notice around saying, empty your lockers or everything gets chucked in the garbage. Where did those spoons go? In the garbage. In the garbage. And I reminded her, we got that note. Those spoons are probably in your locker. Go and get them. And she never did. She was an adult. That's why I keep rubbing that one in. Oh, that felt great.
Probably 18 at the time.
But because it was sentimental, right? And I made such a big stink over not taking them out either. And the funny thing is, she's a really nice girl, and she was never rebellious or anything. But I don't know why she took those spoons all the time. I could never figure that out because she knew how much they meant to me. And that's why I couldn't figure that out. I think she thought that she'd get them back.
I truly did. I truly thought that I would just
But you
get them
never
back.
did.
There you go.
And plus, she didn't want me nagging her to get them back. And I said, can I go to school and pick them up? No, she would have been embarrassed. She goes, no, Mom, don't you go to school. I'll get them, I promise.
Well, in my defense, the ribbon story, if anyone's heard that,
Oh,
so I think I had some justification with that.
okay. Well, let's just
But
move
okay,
on.
if I
Let's
were
just move on.
now, if I were 17, would you have never brought that up? Is it because I was an adult? I just want
No,
to.
I would have brought it up. Yeah. I think because I wouldn't have brought it up if you were 8. Put
Okay,
it that way. Put it that way. Okay, the ribbon story, I've already told it. That does not need to be told again.
that does not. It just.
It was humiliating for her, and it was all I did it to her. So I guess it's probably a tie.
Yeah.
Let's just call it a tie. But yeah, that was bad. My
Let's
ribbon
call it a
story.
wash.
Let's call it a wash. But anyway, none of us are perfect,
Okay,
for sure. Who'd want perfect anyway?
true. I just know you were so happy that I was imperfect in that moment.
Oh,
Okay, next question.
Okay.
Ashley from the United States. My almost 3-year-old daughter favors my husband a lot. He's gone for a lot for work, so I think she's just compensating when he's actually there. She will scream in my face and demand her dad put her to sleep for nap and bedtime. She'll throw big tantrums if I try to do her nighttime routine. She started to get really angry, red-faced, shaking, and swinging. I'm convinced this is because I have a routine and he just lets her do what she wants and have fun at bedtime and then fall asleep on the floor with her. Am I just too hard on her? Have I traumatized her for the few times I've gotten overwhelmed and yelled? How should I approach this? He believes making memories are more important than a strict bedtime routine. He tried to bribe her into letting me put her to bed last night, but it's like pouring salt on a wound to watch her fight so hard to have him instead of me.
that's not fair to the child to have 2 separate routines. Bedtime's kind of important. It's a habit, it's a routine, it's a structure. So he's undermining you. So I can't help you with that. You have to agree on a path at bedtime or just keep fighting. Because you can't have 2 completely different styles like that. It's not fair. What I would do is I would say to him, let's flip a coin and we'll do it your way for 3 weeks. If it doesn't work and she gets worse in other ways, which she might very well do, because she's totally in control of bedtime. And that's kind of a big one. And then say if that doesn't work and if she gets better and better behaved, then we'll keep going. If not, we do it my way for 3 weeks. So flip a coin, see who goes first, see if he'll agree to that. You got to get on the same page. It's kind of a big one, bedtime routine. He's undermining you. Or you're undermining him, if you want to look at the other way. But I don't agree with what he's doing. He's giving in to her and she's in charge. And now she's acting out. It's not bringing out the best in her is what I'm saying.
But I can understand if you're gone a lot for work, wanting to make it as fun as possible.
Yeah, but there's lots of things you can do before bed. Like if he's laying on the floor, I just think that's overkill. You know, there's certain situations I'll do that as exceptions if the child's sick or if they're really scared or something. I might do something like that, but not just because they want that.
Okay.
Or, oh God, I hate saying this even. It sounds like a contradiction, but it kind of isn't. You could say, okay, so she's 3. Oof, should I even say this one? I'll throw it out there. Let's say he's not around a lot and you want bedtime with him to be special. You could literally set up a tent out in the living room and the 2 of them could camp out there and one night a week, that's dad's night to put you to bed. But every other night, if you act out every other night, she'll eventually learn this, then you won't get that camping night. But you could give him that one night a week and it's a special night and they camp out under a tent in the living room. So it could be something like that you would work out together. But then her regular routine should be going to bed on her own.
Is the idea with that she understands that is an exception?
The difference. She understands the difference. Yeah. That's why it shouldn't be in her bedroom. It should be in a tent make it sort of something different. And that could be it's like for a family movie night. Lots of parents get popcorn. They never allow their kids to eat on the couch and they have to go to bed at 7 every night. But on Friday nights, they might have family pizza, popcorn movie night, and they're all up till 10 at night and eating on the couch. It's like that. They don't expect to do that every night of the week. Now, you can't really do that with a 2-year-old as easily, but 3, she can start to learn that there's just a certain thing every Friday night. Dad and I camp under the living room light.
I remember that we used to get was it pizza whenever we'd have a babysitter? We'd get some
Yeah.
fun, because like we just didn't.
They didn't eat junk food growing up, so that was a big deal.
We knew it was the exception.
Yeah, they understand that. It's like Disneyland. They don't expect to be there every day. They know that's the exception. So make the normal rule what you really want, and then the exception can be the treat. But even the exception should be consistent. He can't do it 5 nights a week, and then she'll get all mixed up. It should only be every Friday night or something like that. It's got to be consistent, consistently inconsistent. You know what I'm saying? Like that's an inconsistent night with a regular bedtime routine, but it's consistent on every Friday night or something.
Let's say his schedule's quite varied though, if he's away for work.
Well, then it could be the first night daddy is home. That is when you have that night. It could be that. So just set up a routine. She'll like that, because then she'll make her feel special too. Yeah, you could do it that way.
You talk a lot about routines with kids.
Very important. We all like routines, structure, boundaries. Think about it. What if you had a job, and I hate it when I use this example. Someone's always thinking, I would love that. But what if you had a job and you didn't know what time you were expected to be at work? You didn't know when lunch hour was. The boss didn't expect anything of you. Wouldn't you kind of be able to, you might love it, okay. But, generally, you kind of like to know what's coming. You kind of like to know what's expected of you. That could also work not in your favor. He could say, okay, we're all working till 10 tonight because you didn't come in till 2 o'clock or something. So you see, we kind of like to know what's coming. Kids don't like unpredictable stuff. They don't tend to like that. They tend to like to know what's coming. It makes them feel more in control, and they can mentally prepare for it.
I don't know if this leans into it, but I also think I'd feel resentment if I was following the routine, but there was no, like if I was coming into work on time.
And nobody else was. Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, of course you would. That's the injustices. No one likes an injustice. No one minds injustices if it's everybody, like if it's the same rule for everybody. It's when everybody else like I was always a rule follower. It used to drive me nuts when people would get away with stuff, and I was the only one. I can remember we used to go to nightclubs, and I can remember I had friends who used to sneak in the back door, and I was the idiot standing out in the lineup with everybody else. And even if I did try and sneak in, I would have been the one that was caught. I just don't have that in me. So, but I used to really resent that. I thought, how unfair. Just because they're sneaky and selfish, they all get in an hour before I do. It used to drive me nuts. They don't know who they are. They wouldn't remember that anyway. It was a long time ago.
You raised me be a bit of a rule stickler with all that.
But it's just consideration for other people. Don't butt in line. Basically, that's what that is. Don't butt in line.
Okay, next question is Nicole from the United States. A child age 3.5 is starting to hit me when she gets frustrated. Like she struggles to put on her dress up clothes, or when block tower falls over. How do I stop this behavior, and is it possible to teach her to ask for help before she resorts to hitting?
Well, no, I wouldn't do it that way, because she might not be able to think ahead. But what I would do is she'll think pretty quickly if there's a consequence every time she hits. So I would put no hitting on the behavior board. Check that out. It's a completely free mini course on my website, BratBusters.com, and put down no hitting as her rule. So when she does hit, she will teach herself not to hit, because every time she does, there's a consequence. So let her teach herself that. If you just say to a kid, by the way, you want to think it through before you do, that's useless. They learn through experiences. They don't learn through lectures.
Okay, Alyssa from Canada. How do you teach a 3.5-year-old what lying is?
Well, don't they know? Like, you come up with an example. So I didn't take that. Let's say they have chocolate all around their face. I didn't take that chocolate. They know right away that's a lie. They know it. And then I would just call it like it is. That's a lie. Here's your consequence. You did eat the chocolate. So they know. They know when they're lying.
Okay.
You watch that, tons of funny videos with kids with ink all over them and that, and they put ink all over the baby, and they say, did you do that? No. Covered, and they're holding the pen. They know they're lying. A lie is an instinctive thing. You know when you're not telling the truth. You know when you're lying.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's just instinctive.
We have one last question. So Casey from Australia. A 3-year-old doesn't listen, especially when asked to do something like go to the toilet. Her responses to us asking her to do something is always filled with attitude and hard nose.
Ask you to do something with the toilet. Well, I don't want to use the toilet one here, because that's a whole toilet training kind of idea. So you just say something. Well, I would say, You said we ask her to do something. I would just say, okay, dinner's in 5 minutes, and I'll put the timer on. Okay, dinner. I don't ask a child to come and do what they should be doing. Like that's like saying, okay, can you please come now? We're going to school, please. You don't ask her what she needs to do. Like in class, in a school, they don't say, okay, can you please go to lunch now? Can you please? It's just, this is what's happening. Okay, lunchtime. Okay. Just sort of treat it like it's happening. So don't ask her to do what needs to be done. Can you please go to bed? Can you please sit up at the table and eat your dinner? She'll see it as a possibility that she doesn't have to do it that way. So just say, okay, time for dinner, time for bed, let's get going. And then if she has a fit, just pick her up and put her in bed, or, just follow through. She's testing you. She's exercising her leadership. She's like, no, because you're asking. Don't give her an option to say no. She'll say no anyway, but don't ask her. You're asking her, do you want to have dinner now? Do you want to say, can you please? No, no, no. She doesn't respect you. It's just a tell. It means she doesn't respect you. Work on your leadership skills. It's in my boot camp course, or you can look at the behavior board. The behavior board is just a teaching tool. It's like the training wheels with all this stuff. It teaches you how to get organized and get some rules and consequences in place and how to follow through with all that. We only do one rule per week, and everybody's on there. You're on there too. If you're not accountable for your kids, you're just a dictator. You're not a leader. Leaders are accountable because you lead by example. A leader leads so they'll follow. They're following your lead. You're accountable for your mistakes. You break a rule, you're accountable. They're watching you. They're not listening to you. They're watching you. So yeah, just follow through. Have some rules. Check it out. One rule per week and follow through.
Yeah. I just want to make sure with this podcast we're giving
enough information.
You just making sure that it's like actionable or something they can do.
Well, put down, what did she say she'd want to do? Ask her to do anything, whatever it is she needs to do. So you could say, sit down at the table for dinner, sit within 5 minutes of being asked to do so. So you could say, okay, in 5 minutes, we're going to be sitting having dinner, and start the timer. If she doesn't, she broke a rule. And after dinner, you say, okay, so remember you didn't come to the table in 5 minutes, the timer went off. So the rule is blah, blah, blah. She has to do a chore, or if she won't do the chore as the consequence, then you take away the iPad that night or something. So you always start with a positive action. And if they won't do that, then you do the negative deprivation consequence.
This one, maybe just touch on it though, because this one was about going to the toilet. I don't know if you...
Oh gosh. Okay. The reason is that if you haven't toilet stuff is not a discipline. That's the problem with that, is I never discipline around potty stuff because it's a bodily function and I never want to treat it like a bad behavior. Can they hear the neighbors barking? Maybe not. We'll just keep talking. Got neighbors. They got their dogs in the hallway barking.
The neighbors aren't barking. The neighbors' dogs are barking.
I don't know. It could be the neighbors. Anyway, they have 2 dogs, and the other neighbors down the hall have 2 dogs. Those 4 dogs hate each other, and if they can smell the other ones in the hallway, it's bedlam. They're face to face. Forget it. Anyway, so yeah, the potty training. Okay, she doesn't want to sit in the potty. I would say, okay, so it's time to go sit on the potty, and then I would use an incentive program for that, and it's treats. It just is, because I never want to discipline around bodily functions. But my potty training course is not really applicable here because she probably already knows how to go to the potty. So yeah, I don't want to give her a consequence if she won't. And if she does wet herself, you clean it up. You never get a kid to clean up after themselves. But I would say, okay, I'll tell you what. So if you sit on the potty once every hour, you will get, I don't know, 3 chocolate chips or something. I don't know, something little incentive, or you'll get 5 minutes on the iPad. Have an incentive for that, because I never discipline around bodily functions. It's just, I don't want to go on about that, but it's a bodily function. I don't want any shaming going on around that. And I don't want kids cleaning up after themselves. That's still in the shame department. I don't want any shame around that.
I just thought it was important to touch on.
Yeah, I did touch on it. Yeah, I did do that. I was a good girl.
That was it for the questions.
Okay, 3 years old. If they're easy kids, they're never going to change anyway. But a lot of kids will test you. That's really quite normal that kids will test you. When they turn 3 years old, they start to find their power. And some of them will exercise it. They're much less likely to do so if you're already a calm leader. You don't yell. You follow through with what you're going to say. You're very loving. You play with them in their world a lot. they're very, very likely to get easier at 3 than they are to get harder. So, but if you're a pleaser, you're saying, okay, if I give you this, will you be good? That kind of stuff, they'll probably get more difficult. So your leadership is already starting to kick in when they're 2. And then when they're 3, that's a real tell. I think that's about it. How do you feel? You're all good? No more questions?
No more questions.
Okay, well, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll talk about something else next time. Happy parenting.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're ready to dive deeper, check out BratBusters.com to learn more about the Behavior Board, parenting courses, and private one-on-one coaching with Lisa. If you've enjoyed the show so far, we'd love it if you could take a moment to follow, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more parents just like you. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional advice. Lisa is a parenting coach, mom, and grandmother. She is not a licensed psychologist or counselor. Her services do not replace the care of psychologists or other healthcare professionals. For a full disclaimer, please visit BratBusters.com/disclaimer.